A high-pitched cry for help by Problematic / Lana on AO3. Chapter 18. Lost and Found. The plan was simple. Izawa had talked to Mike about Izuku humming the song in the car for maybe 1 or 2 seconds, and as he suspected, he was the only one to hear it. He gave Mike a few minutes to cry his heart out. The poor man swore that day to put his hearing aids on top volume, but could only handle it an hour tops. They decided against telling Nemuri, as they guessed she also didn't notice, just to not give anyone high hopes. After that, Shota talked to Mike about his plan. They talked about it, in sign language, fearing Izuku listening. It felt wrong, but the idea was good. The plan was simple. Really simple, actually. It basically meant to stop worrying so much about scaring their little one. Once they were more relaxed, Asashi would probably start accidentally using his quirk at home again. And as a consequence, Shota would use his to cut him out. Simple. The idea was to simply show Izuku by example that there was no fear in using his quirk in a controlled environment, and that way maybe encouraging him to try talking. Mike was a bit scared of his little listener feeling overwhelmed, though, so they would introduce him to their regular behavior slowly. The first time they let their guard down, it happened when they were cooking. Izuku Bunny, can you give me that can of dash? Mike was cutting tofu to make miso soup. He was happy to finally be able to cook the same for the whole family. Little Izuku grabbed the can and made a sign. I open. It was impossible to not find adorable the idea of him trying to help in the kitchen, and should have thought it was safe enough to give him the can opener, as it was an automatic one. They would just have to put the can in it. He grabbed the can opener and was about to set it next to Izuku, who was drawing in the floor previously to grabbing said can. Before he could hand it over, they started hearing an odd scraping sound. Mike put his hand on his husband's shoulder, stopping him, carefully watching what Izuku was doing. He was rubbing the can against the floor. He truly was giving it his all, his tongue between his lips in concentration, and the adults were left standing stunned at the odd behavior. Finally, after maybe 2 whole minutes, he retracted the can, and with just a few taps against the floor, the can opened as if nothing. What the hell? Shota couldn't contain the bad word when retrieving the can from a smiling Izuku. He even noticed he was slightly agitated. Looking closely, he then understood that he wore down the sides of the aluminum so much that it ended up giving in and opening. Sho, don't cuss! Izuku, how did you learn to do that? Still smiling, Izuku proceeded to simply indicate, if hungry, I take cans. Aizawa wished he didn't understand what that entailed. Izuku was left alone long enough that learning to open cans manually was probably one of the only options he had to survive. He had forcefully learned how to take care of himself, since no one else would. Aizawa had to swallow the knot in his throat and the ache in his chest. He made sure not to make the situation a huge deal, and just crouched down with the can opener to teach him how to do it. He took another can, well, it would have to be used for dinner, I guess, and showed him how to put it in and wait for it until it was done spinning. It is easier, and you won't hurt your fingers that way. Excited at the sight of the spinning part, he shook his hands in the air and clapped happily. Shota gave him another can to try it for himself. And this one for what exactly? He just looked too cute to not allow him to. This is Expectedly, he was cut mid-sentence by his quirk being erased. His eyes only flashed red for a second, but it was more than enough. In less than that, Mike was looking worryingly sick and crouched down next to Shota, looking behind him. There, covering his ears and eyes closed, Izuku hid himself as far possible under a cabinet. I'm so sorry, baby, he said, his voice guilty and so very soft. I got carried away. I didn't mean to scare you. The underground hero put a hand on top of the one covering the younger man's ears. Everything is okay, kiddo. This is what my quirk is for. He seemed to react to that, taking both hands off and watching them, as if expecting for them to be bloody. They weren't. So he looked up, confusion and relief clearly shown in his features. He watched them both, and then analyzed Mike for a minute or so. No danger. No danger here. We are pro-heroes, remember? He seemed to grasp the concept, so he continued. There is nothing wrong with not having full control of a quirk, especially when the people around know what to do. The rest of the lunch and afternoon, the kid remained silent, ironically, and deep in thought. Mike was afraid that he had instilled a fear of not only his quirk, but his presence too. But Izuku didn't run away from him, nor did he seem more distant. But Shoto was sure it was quite the opposite. He believed that he at least now had the tools to question what he had previously known. But it would be up to him to decide if he was ever comfortable enough to talk. He would never let anyone pressure his kid to do anything ever again. The blonde's fears melted away when Izuku knocked twice on the door that night, asking him specifically to read a bedtime story. He held his emotions down to keep it casual. Maybe that way he would be able to do it every night. Shoto would fight to the death for that spot, though. He kept his voice down and soft, making funny voices when initiated, and kept up with the plot as well as he could. In what universe he would be expected to read Moby Dick to a 6-year-old kid, he could barely understand it, but it was his request, so he complied. It took around 20 pages for him to start snoozing off, his head slowly falling to the side. Mike put the old book down and made sure Izuku was comfortable before covering him well and leaving the night-light on. He even dared to give him a kiss on the forehead, even as the kid still looked at him, his eyes closing sleepily in the smallest of smiles, kind of saying goodbye for the day. The loud hero shut the door carefully, so as to not wake him up again, and pounded his hand on his chest as he pushed himself away from the room and into the living room where his husband was. I think it might work, Sho, he said, getting closer. He was so adorable just now. I'm gonna have cavities, I swear. Not that I mind. The only answer he received was a half-smile that didn't reflect on his eyes. Hey there, is something wrong? Is it about the quirk thing? We could drop it, hun. Mike sat at his side, grabbing his hands to give him some simple, caring massages. It's not that, although I didn't particularly enjoy watching him getting scared. He sighed heavily, giving him a short kiss, and then looked back at his computer. Then, is it about the teaching job? We can still decline. I believe Nezu will be willing to help either way. He really likes Izu. Shoto huffed and shook his head. Then what? I'm running out of options here. Namoasa sent me an email stating they found Inko Midoriya. Oh lord, is she in custody then? What about Hisashi? He then realized that his husband was avoiding looking him in the eyes. Sho, what is it? You're scaring me. They only found her head. So, no head? I'm sorry. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. Not intrusive, what was it? Impulsive. My impulsive thoughts won over. Okay, my bad. I had a friend who, every time there was anything having to do with beheading, or, having the head chopped off, always just, so, no head? And it's just embedded in my mind, so every time, my first thought when I read that, they only found her head, it wasn't, oh my god, what happened? Oh my god, who did that? No. The first thing that came up in my mind was, so, no head? Okay, but let's go on to what the second thing that came into my mind, which is, what the fuck happened? Thank God she's dead. We didn't like her. We didn't like her one bit. She was kind of iffy. She was kind of we don't like a bad Inko in this household, okay? But, what the fuck happened? What the fuck happened? She was... Oh, wait, hold up. We saw Hisashi and he was rampaging through... Did Hisashi do something to Inko when he, like, threw Izuku out and Izuku had to be hospitalized? Like, is that what happened? No, wait. I think if I remember correctly, he was arguing with someone, so she was still alive at that point, so it had to have happened within the 2-month period. I'm just saying right now, it's most likely Hisashi. A lot of the times in murder cases, it's always the spouse. It's hilarious. It's not hilarious, actually, considering that the most likely person to die, or, you know, to have the people with the most high probability of death is pregnant wives. And their most likely murderer happens to be their husband, or, you know, significant other. Most of the time it's husband, right? But yeah, iffy, but whatever. Point taken is, and even if it's not their husband, like, just a pregnant woman in general, or a pregnant person in general, right? Because, you know, you could be non-pregnant, you could, you know, whatever. A pregnant person in general is more likely to get, you know, offed. But, yeah, in a case where, like, someone is murdered and they had a husband, right? This is a wife and husband. The most likely suspect is always the husband, always the spouse, always the significant other, and then the family, right? It always goes like that, and then friends, right? It's really, really weird when it's like someone completely unrelated and it's a completely unrelated crime. Those tend to be serial killer type of crimes, and they're harder to, you know, pinpoint because there is no correlation from the victim to the murderer. But as I was saying, I'm pretty sure this is probably Hisashi who did it. I'm putting my head down. They probably had an argument. Hisashi then, nope, no more head with you, and then, or maybe he dismembered her body parts. I wonder what he did. Now I'm curious. I'm interested. I'm invested. Also, we love that Izuku is slowly healing. I love that. I also hate how it paints an ugly picture considering how did Izuku learn how to open those cans? Like, that paints an ugly picture, just saying. But yeah, as always, raindrops, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Link to my Discord server and socials are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.